Fit the pattern. Oh boy, the FBI, once again, the FBI, we are not impressed. And you know what? We haven't been impressed for a long time. It's about time we have a really full and honest conversation about the FBI and their treachery and their incompetence. The list is long and goes way back in history. Maybe, Waco, Texas, the Branch Davidians, 9/11, the screw-ups around there. The JFK assassination, you know, they blew that. They lost track of Harvey Oswald. And yeah, Dr. Nasser and what he was able to do, how the FBI passed on very actionable evidence. They didn't do a damn thing. And they persecute innocent people, whether it's President Trump, whether it's Richard Jewell. And remember, and I'm going to talk about him again, Mr. Hatfill, the alleged anthrax bomber, until they found out they were wrong and had to pay him $6 million for his trouble.
The FBI playbook calls for pressure, pushing a suspect for a confession. They decided to squeeze Stephen Hatfill. It started with what the FBI calls bumper lock, 24-hour surveillance, and they let him know they were doing it.
Management was convinced he was the right guy. And so as a result, there were, intense surveillance, bumper lock type surveillance of Dr. Hatfill that went on for months.
There is a brutal, sustained attempt by the FBI in these cases to turn or crack the suspect. And it doesn't look much like what happens on TV. It can be quite rough. And what they were doing to Hatfill clearly was an effort to create pressure in the hope that he would crack.
They got it in their head that Stephen Hatfill was the anthrax mailer. He wasn't, but the Attorney General himself implicated the guy.
Despite the lack of physical evidence, at headquarters, Director Mueller insisted his agents stay after Hatfill.
Many people in management, in upper management, were convinced that Dr. Hatfill was the right guy. I mean, it was just very clear, and that they were not going to get off that train.
Mueller and the FBI wanted to ratchet up the pressure even more, and across the street at the Justice Department, Mueller's boss, John Ashcroft, did just that at a press conference.
I'd be pleased to respond to questions. Yes, sir.
Sir, is Stephen Hatfill still a suspect in the anthrax case?
Mr. Hatfill is a person of interest to the Department of Justice, and we continue the investigation, and for me to comment further, it would be inappropriate.
Stephen Hatfill was totally innocent, and there they are from that podium. Hey, isn't that somebody we know? Yes, it is. That's Chris Christie. Chris Christie's always bragging to this day about his days as a federal prosecutor. I don't think that's anything to brag about. These guys are wrong all the time. They get it in their head that somebody's guilty, and then they just look at the world through that prism. Not at all the evidence, just the evidence that will convict somebody. I think that's a detriment. I think that will work against him if he ever is foolish enough to run for president.
I learned when I was a prosecutor that bad people and stupid people lie all the time for no explicable reason. As a former prosecutor, I wasn't allowed to ignore the laws I didn't agree with. My job was to enforce all the laws. And I'm a former prosecutor, George. I make decisions based upon evidence, not based upon feelings or partisanship or loyalty. You make those decisions based upon evidence.
All right, easy there, tough guy. You know, that whole regime, after they were done with Stephen Hatfill, next was Mr. Ivins, Bruce Ivins, a scientist at Fort Detrick, Maryland. It looks like, the FBI told us this is the guy. Oh, he definitely did it just after he died, just after they applied so much pressure on him that they may have driven him literally to suicide. I don't think he did it. The National Academy of Sciences doesn't think he did it. And the FBI harassed him to death, literally.
They put together a hastily arranged press conference. U.S. Attorney Jeffrey Taylor spoke for Mueller and Montooth.
We stand here today firmly convinced that we have the person who committed those attacks, and we are confident that had this gone to trial, we would have proved him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Mark?
Just days after his suicide, the government publicly made its case against Bruce Ivins.
We have a flask that's effectively the murder weapon from which those spores were taken that was controlled by Dr. Ivins. Dr. Ivins was working inordinate hours alone at night. He had submitted a questionable sample of anthrax from his flask. He had detailed threats in his group therapy session. He had, quote, incredible paranoid delusional thoughts at times. Based upon the totality of the evidence we had gathered against him, we are confident that Dr. Ivins was the only person responsible for these attacks.
Back then, I believed them. Today, I do not. No way, no way. From that podium, with that kind of confidence. By the way, they never indicted them. They never arrested him. Remember? The same podium. They said that Stephen Hatfield did it. Again, Dr. Bruce Ivins, and I don't think enough attention has been paid on this case. I believe he's an innocent man driven to suicide by the federal government. So, the FBI, you can understand by this point why we are kind of done with you. No confidence whatsoever. And when it comes to the government, be my guest. Shut it down. What do we care? Be right back.